The Jews didn't believe it, didn't believe the man was blind to begin with. So they called the parents of the man now bright-eyed with sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, the one you say was born blind? So how is it that he now sees?" His parents said, "We know he is our son. We know he was born blind, but we don't know how he came to see. Haven't a clue about who opened his eyes. Why don't you ask him? He's a grown man and can speak for himself." His parents were talking like this because they were intimidated by the Jewish leaders who had already decided that anyone who took a stand that this was the Messiah would be kicked out of the meeting place. That's why his parents said, "Ask him, he's a grown man." They called the man back a second time, the man who had been blind, and told him, "Give credit to God. We know this man is an impostor." He replied, "I know nothing about that one way or the other, but I know one thing for sure. I was blind. I now see." They said, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" "I've told you over and over, and you haven't listened. Why do you want to hear it again? Are you so eager to become his disciples?" With that, they jumped all over him. "You might be a disciple of that man, but we're disciples of Moses. We know for sure that God spoke to Moses, but we have no idea where this man even comes from." The man replied, "This is amazing. You claim to know nothing about him, but the fact is he opened my eyes. It's well known that God isn't at the beck and call of sinners, but listens carefully to anyone who lives in reverence and does his will. That someone opened the eyes of a man born blind has never been heard of, ever. If this man didn't come from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything." They said, "You're nothing but dirt. How dare you take that tone with us?" Then they threw him out in the street. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out and went and found him. He asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man said, "Point him out to me, sir, so that I can believe in him." Jesus said, "You're looking right at him. Don't you recognize my voice?" "Master, I believe," the man said, and worshiped him. Jesus then said, "I came into the world to bring everything into the clear light of day, making all the distinctions clear, so that those who have never seen will see, and those who have made a great pretense of seeing will be exposed as blind." Some Pharisees overheard him and said, "Does that mean you're calling us blind?" Jesus said, "If you were really blind, you would be blameless. But since you claim to see everything so well, you're accountable for every fault and failure." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Today's story has much to teach us about the power of questions, the questions we ask, and our ability and willingness to hear answers that challenge us. The story begins with disciples asking Jesus this question: Who sinned? Who sinned, this man or his parents, causing him to become blind? Why on earth would they ask such a thing? Well, in ancient times, people believed that deformities, disabilities, and diseases were caused by sin. If you were blind from birth, before you even had a chance to do anything wrong, then, well, must have been your parents. Somebody, somewhere, must have done something if a baby is born blind. Now, if asking who sinned seems like a pathetically outdated question, well, just think of all the ways we still ask that question today. When we hear someone has cancer, we immediately wonder, how'd they get cancer? Did they smoke? Did it run in their family? When we see an unsheltered person out in the street, we ask, do they have a mental health issue? Or did they just make poor choices? When someone is sexually assaulted, it's what were they wearing? How much did they have to drink? Were they out too late? Were they somewhere they shouldn't have been? When bad things happen, we ask these things because, number one, these questions put distance between us and the bad thing. It's not our bad thing, it's way over there happening to that person. And second, these kinds of questions give us a sense of control. If we know who or what to blame, we can maybe avoid these scary, scary things. In my family, we've had a few people with dementia and probably Alzheimer's. And so we read all the articles, all of them, about how to reduce our risks of getting it, what to eat, what to drink, what to do, what not to eat, what not to drink, what not to do. Anything to give ourselves a sense of control, hoping that if we can just do all the right things, we can escape this, even though the people in our family who've had this were already doing all these right things for the most part. Who sinned? Who is to blame? How did this happen, and how can I make sure it doesn't happen to me? Jesus says, well, instead of asking, what did they do? A self-centered question that seeks to maintain distance and control, a better response might be to look for what God can do. Where is God at work? Where do we see the light shining in the darkness? And how can we help? Now, the religious experts also asked some questions because this healing was a really big deal. Now, it's one thing for someone who had developed blindness to regain their sight. That's a miracle too. But someone who'd been born blind? Who did this? They did it how? By making mud on the Sabbath? You can see the problem. A person with the power to heal a man born blind must be from God, because nobody had ever seen power like this before. But if this person was from God, then wouldn't they have to be obedient to God's commandments, including the Sabbath? And apparently making mud was not allowed on the Sabbath, according to the long tradition and strict interpretation of the law that the religious leaders had studied and taught for generation after generation after generation. So they are stuck. If they allow themselves to see that someone could do what Jesus did on the Sabbath and still be from God, this would mean that the religious leaders were not the experts they thought they were. And that would mean a loss of power and control for them. Plus, if they're wrong about Jesus and the Sabbath, what else might they be wrong about? And what about the blind man and his or his parents' sin? If a disability was a result of sin and suddenly that disability is gone, well, what do you do with that? They do well to talk with the man who was born blind, but because he won't tell them what they want to hear, they can't hear him and they shut him down. I don't know about you, but out of all the characters in this story, the religious leaders are the ones I really pay attention to, not only because I work as a religious professional, but because of the way they're so sure they're right about so many things. They're not bad people. They've just gotten used to seeing things a certain way. And because they can't break out of that, they are missing out on this absolutely phenomenal miracle, this evidence of God's presence and healing power in the world right in front of them. And it makes me wonder what signs of God's presence might be happening right in front of us, but we can't recognize them because of the limited way we see the world. And especially, Are there voices that we dismiss too easily because they belong to children or outsiders or people with little education and few resources? Now let's look at the man who was born blind. There's such a poignancy to his story, isn't there? If he was blind from birth, he's grown up being excluded all the time. He couldn't work, at least not enough to support himself. He couldn't get married and have a family. His neighbors know him as the man who used to sit and beg. That was his life. That's who he was. Without even daring to hope for healing, one day he meets Jesus on the side of the road and receives a particularly intimate method of healing, very different from the story that Pat shared with us last week, where a royal official's son was healed long distance without ever being seen. The man receives his sight, but immediately has to deal with skepticism, his own parents' fear, and questioning by the authorities. Multiple times he's brought before them. In receiving his sight, part of his joy in being healed would have been that now he finally belongs. He can fully participate in the life of the community and take his place alongside all the other able-bodied, able-sighted men. Except now he's been kicked out of the synagogue, which was the center of community life. Even his own parents had made sure that in responding to the authorities, they answered in such a way that they would not get kicked out, but he did. The good news is, when he's kicked out, it's Jesus who comes to find him. You've probably already picked up on the irony in this story that the man born blind can see better than anybody else by the end, while the men in charge, who have every advantage of privilege and education, see less and less and less. One of the things that sets the blind man apart from the religious authorities is his willingness to say, "I don't know." He also models courage in the way he sticks to his story, what he does know. There's even more irony in the way the leaders say to him, "Give credit to God," meaning not this sinner Jesus who you insist healed you. And yet giving credit to God is exactly what the man does in standing by his testimony. On this Transfiguration Sunday, our narrative lectionary this year gives us not the traditional story of Jesus' transfiguration on the mountaintop with Peter, James, and John, but a story of a radical transformation that blows the socks of everybody in town and calls into question what it really means to see clearly. So as we prepare to begin the season of Lent this week, here's our prayer. Lord, heal us from our blindness. Give us the courage to see clearly, knowing that sometimes seeing clearly will cost us something and turn our lives upside down. Give us the grace to admit when we simply don't know. Help us testify boldly to your presence in our lives, giving you credit for all the blessings you pour out upon us day after day. When we are excluded, come and find us, as you did for the man born blind. Christ, be our light. Amen.